Welcome back. Or if this is your first time here, thank you for choosing to settle into this quiet little corner. Tonight we begin with the lives of the Egyptian concubines, the women who shared the pharaoh's bed, waited for years just to catch a single glance, learned the art of seduction, lived amidst rivalry and vanity, and yet remained shrouded in mystery and wielded silent power. Are you ready? Let's journey back in time with Sleeping History to uncover the lives of the concubines of ancient Egypt. You're lying on an ebony bed, its legs carved in the shape of lion heads, your back slightly propped up by a cushion woven from the finest Egyptian linen. The air in the room is gently cool, despite the desert outside beginning to stir with heat. Dawn hasn't fully broken, but a soft pink glow from the east has started to slip through a curtain as thin as dragonfly wings, woven from white linen so delicate it could make even the wind envious. Outside your chamber, footsteps as soft as silk echo faintly. Not those of guards or high priests, but of a familiar handmaiden. She carries a wooden comb and a small tray. On the tray are the items you'll use for the daily ritual of becoming fragrant, even before your eyes are fully open. There is no alarm to wake you. Instead, the day begins with a soft tap on a clay jar, a sound as hollow and gentle as the heartbeat of the god Anubis. On days when you are rumoured to be called upon, or whispers swirl that the pharaoh might pass near your quarters, morning may arrive accompanied by the gentle pluck of a harp, playing a melody that acts as a subtle warning. Today is a day to shine. No one sleeps in late in the harem. Sleeping in means dry skin, tangled hair, and missing your chance at the rare oils in the massage room. To say nothing of being outshined by the other concubines. And if you think there will be a second chance, you're mistaken. Before you can utter your first words, the handmaiden sets before you a small bowl filled with a greyish-white powder, natron, a mixture of sodium carbonate and sodium bicarbonate. Harvested from dry salt lakes like Wadi Natron, this powder was once used for embalming, but now it's your daily toothpaste. The handmaiden takes a small cloth, dips it into the natron, wraps it around her finger and brings it to your mouth. You part your lips, half awake, half sceptical, and let her begin scrubbing your teeth. No toothbrush, no minty toothpaste, but your breath must be fresh nonetheless. In the harem, fresh breath is a diplomatic weapon. After all, who knows if you might happen to pass by the pharaoh today? Some of the more experienced concubines pass along whispered tips, chew mint leaves, or the root of a fragrant herb after cleansing your mouth. But don't overdo it. If your breath smells better than the queen's, you might attract the wrong kind of attention. Once your mouth is clean, by ancient standards at least, the handmaiden brings a bowl of warm water. This isn't ordinary well water, but water infused with white lotus petals or mint leaves, leaving a faint, calming scent. You wash your face with the floral water, pink or blue lotus depending on the day. The water, stored overnight in a clay jar, retains a perfect warmth by morning. Sometimes, a few drops of myrrh essential oil are added. This resin, once as valuable as gold, brings a bold fragrance, light antiseptic properties, and makes you feel as though you're bathing in a bottle of Dior perfume, circa 1500 BCE. Once your skin has been awakened, it's time to revive it. Like a farmer watering his crops in the desert. The handmaiden uses a small spoon to apply a herbal clay mask, made from Nile River clay mixed with crushed aloe vera, and occasionally the fresh saffron threads of turmeric. The blend is smoothed evenly over your face, cool and soothing, though it might feel like someone has pressed a green bean cake onto your forehead. As you sit for 10 minutes, birds chirp in the distance and the air fills with a faint whiff of incense, while your face slowly hardens like a miniature sphinx statue. But don't frown. It could leave wrinkles. Once the mask is washed off, your skin is soft as fine linen, radiant like still morning water. Good. You're now ready to proceed to the next stage in your lifelong quest for beauty. In the Egyptian harem, washing your hair wasn't just washing your hair. It was a miniature ritual, luxurious, sacred, and honestly a bit inconvenient. You think the concubines wore their real hair? Oh no. Under the scorching Egyptian sun, who would dare keep long hair? Real hair was often shaved short or tied up neatly, to avoid smelling like a camel by noon. Instead, wigs reigned supreme, woven from dyed black flax, soft, airy and elegant, or horsehair, for towering styles that looked like you were hiding a staff in your bun. Each morning you had a choice: wash your real hair, quick and easy, or wash your wig, which required a small support team. You sat on a low wooden stool inlaid with ivory, resting your head on a curved bronze basin, designed so water would flow cleanly into a clay jar below without soaking your linen robe. The handmaiden would prepare a blend of saponite clay, a light oil-absorbing earth mixed with rosemary water simmered in a fragrant ceramic pot. On special days she might add a few drops of orange or lemon oil, both fragrant and great for shine. Foam? Barely any. But you'd feel cleaner than a lotus blooming after a stormy night. If you chose to wash your wig, the handmaiden would carefully remove it, place it on a wooden rack, and wash each strand as if it were a silk veil. Then it would be laid out to dry on a bamboo frame in the courtyard, beneath the soft morning sun, strong enough to dry, but gentle enough not to fade the deep black sheen. People often say, washing hair is a moment of peace. For a concubine, it might be the only moment you could lie still, eyes closed, head cool, without needing to keep up appearances. Don't assume just because you lived thousands of years ago, royal Egyptians settled for mud scrubs in the river. Absolutely not. You, a concubine favoured by Pharaoh, would enter a private bathing area, usually a secluded corner of the palace, hidden behind curtains of white linen embroidered with golden thread. These fine curtains fluttered in the early breeze, letting sunbeams dance across the cool stone floor. No gilded showers or jacuzzi tubs here, as your modern imagination might expect. But in this serene space, shielded from the desert wind, a gleaming limestone bath awaited you. Hand-carved with lotus petals around the rim, it took an aging artisan 2 flood seasons to complete, and now it is yours, a symbol of your entry into the royal harem at the tender age of 16. Before your feet even touch the cool stone floor, your handmaiden is already kneeling, offering a pair of sandals made from soft jute grass. 2 others begin the delicate task of warming the bath water, drawn from a private palace well, gently heated in clay pots buried in warm ashes since before dawn. When the water reaches the perfect temperature, warm enough to soothe the heart, but not hot enough to blister the delicate jade-like skin of a beauty, they pour it into the tub, alternating with cooler water to find a harmonious balance. A large wooden spoon stirs the water, creating gentle swirls that help dissolve lotus oil and incense essence into the bath, releasing a fragrance that is both pure and ceremonial. It would not be an exaggeration to say you're preparing to preserve yourself like a sacred offering, or at the very least like a goddess letting her spirit drift in the sacred waters of a miniature Nile. You step into the tub, your toes meeting the warm water. A subtle wave of heat winds its way through your skin, sending a shiver. Not from cold, but from the growing awareness that being served is no longer luxury, but nature. You sit down, your back resting lightly against the tub's edge, eyes closed, and the true ritual begins. There's no vigorous scrubbing here like among the Greeks, or the strange habits of foreign peoples. Egypt believes in softness, in the harmony between the human body and nature, between skin and fragrance. A handmaiden, using a piece of linen dipped in water, dabs it into a dry herbal cleansing powder, an ancient blend of rice bran, crushed rose petals, and powdered fragrant roots, then gently massages it over your body in slow, circular motions. There is no soap here. Soap contains harsh lye, fit only for scrubbing the filthy uniforms of palace guards, never for the petal-soft skin of a woman chosen to serve Pharaoh. While you soak, another attendant pours warm water over your shoulders using a small bronze vessel. The stream flows like a miniature waterfall, rinsing away any lingering dust from the night, both literally and metaphorically. A day in the harem is a silent battlefield, where every glance, every smile, every scent, and even a single rosy flush on your neck might be a weapon, or a downfall. So this bath, more than just hygiene, is a spiritual tune-up, a moment of preparation for war. No one bathes alone here, and not everyone gets to bathe like this. Slaves may rinse themselves after hauling bricks from the pyramid yards, but they don't have lavender oils or elite Egyptian linen towels, and certainly not someone gently wiping their brow while whispering, "Your face is glowing like the full moon tonight, my lady." In the ancient Egyptian harem, where beauty was not merely a matter of appearance but a supple weapon to win the pharaoh's favour, There existed an unspoken rule as strict as royal decree: no hair, no trouble. No thick eyebrows, no stray hairs on arms, no fuzz on legs, and absolutely no trace of anything left behind in areas where nothing should be. Perfect smoothness from head to heel was the hallmark of noble status, an eloquent testament to just how leisurely your palace life truly was. The ritual began with what sounded like a simple step, but in truth bordered on a daring gamble with the god Thoth himself: shaving with copper blades. Not the sleek stainless razors of the modern world, but hand-forged bronze blades with handles made of wood or bone, sometimes engraved with protective deities to bless your delicate skin. Before shaving, the handmaiden would apply a thin layer of plant resin, perhaps warm acacia gum or beeswax, onto the area marked for cleansing. Its purpose? To soften the hair, minimize skin irritation, or perhaps simply to heighten the illusion that you were being treated with the same reverence as a sacred urn before ritual offering. Full-body hair removal was no quick task. Each stroke of the blade was a moment of tension. One wrong move, one tiny nick, and you might as well sign your week away to shame and sulking. A scratch may be small, but in Egypt's hot, dry climate where dust lingered in every breath, infection was a very real threat. And if, gods forbid, Pharaoh spotted a suspicious red mark behind your ear or on your calf, then condolences. That day, your name would not be called on the evening beauty list. They say the priestesses of Karnak Temple also practice full-body shaving to symbolize purity before the gods. But for concubines, it was different. They shaved not to serve the divine, but to attract one living god, Pharaoh himself, here in the realm of the mortals. After the shaving ritual, your skin is gently anointed with fragrant oils, most commonly moringa or sesame seed oil, to soothe any irritation, and sometimes to hide the consequences. From a distance, your skin would gleam like glazed pottery, glistening under the sun, as if polished for display on the altar of the goddess Isis. As the water in the bath begins to cool, a handmaiden brings you a dry towel, hand-woven from the finest linen, so delicate it could slip through a golden ring. You step out, allowing them to dry every inch of your body with movements so gentle, it feels like they're tending to a newborn kitten. Not rushed, not slow, but not a second wasted. One woman applies a body balm made from honey and moringa oil, massaging it into your skin. Another sprinkles powdered incense, finely crushed resin, onto your wrists, behind your ears, and at the backs of your knees, the spots believed to hold scent the longest. Finally, you are wrapped in a fresh white linen dress, cinched at the waist with a strand of red thread, the colour of life, seduction, and, most importantly, luck. Because in this palace, even fragrance is political, and that's it. You. Clean, fragrant, your skin glowing like a stone statue newly dusted, your eyes shimmering like a well just filled, are ready to step into a new day. A day where even the slightest frown from the pharaoh could shift the fate of dozens. But first, a light breakfast. Fresh figs, a barley cake, and a sip of chilled grape wine. A reward for those who have completed the bathing ritual in all its sacred precision. And when you're a concubine in ancient Egypt, living in a sun-drenched, highly competitive palace, your skin is not just skin. It's a weapon of survival. Before you even dream of applying kohl eyeliner or a dab of red lipstick, the first and most crucial task of the day is this: cleanse and care for your skin as if tomorrow were the pharaoh's next choosing ceremony. In the dry, dusty heat of ancient Egypt, your face can't afford to crack and flake like the Nile riverbed in drought. That's why every concubine, from minor consorts to ambitious handmaidens, whispered to one another the secrets of natural but powerful skincare. The first go-to, a mixture of yogurt and honey, to both brighten and soften the skin. Sure, yogurt might sound better suited to eating, but in the harem, delicious foods were often used as face masks before they ever reached your plate. Honey, on the other hand, was considered the elixir of the face, and if you were lucky enough to have a beekeeper offer a fresh honeycomb, you could rest assured your complexion would shine like moonlight falling on the temple of Karnak. And if your skin was so dry it felt like you were living inside the desert itself, there were lifesavers: almond oil and castor oil. These oils were hand-pressed, gently warmed by the handmaidens, or perhaps by their loyalty, and applied to your face with such care and attention, even the gods would envy you. Not only did these oils moisturize, but they also left you smelling as sweet as a ripening date fruit in the palace garden. On special days, say, when there were whispers the pharaoh might visit your chambers that evening, a white clay mask was mandatory. Sourced from the banks of the Nile, clay or mineral mud was believed to be eternal medicine for the skin. It absorbed impurities, oil, and even the sorrow of being overlooked. At these moments, you would sit as still as a statue of the goddess Isis, letting the mask dry slowly and praying that a miracle would rise from your pores. But don't worry, you weren't expected to do all this alone. In the harem, each concubine usually had 1 or 2 handmaidens assigned specifically to the fine arts of the face. Their tasks included stirring the yogurt, checking the oil's temperature, applying the clay, and most importantly, complementing your complexion. Your skin is as radiant as the light of Ra, they'd say, even when you knew you were breaking out from stress. Once your skin has been meticulously nourished, as though preparing for an offering to the god of beauty, the next stage, makeup, is when the real battle in the harem begins. And you know it well. In this place, survival can hinge on nothing more than a dusting of powder, a single stroke of eyeliner, or, gods forbid, one uneven eyebrow hair. You sit before a polished copper mirror so finely burnished it reflects even your pores. 2 handmaidens kneel beside you, one grinding minerals, the other warming sheep fat. You do nothing except breathe lightly, sit upright, and prepare for the moment of transformation. A pale face is an unspoken declaration. I've never worked the fields. So your handmaiden, whose hands once served the queen herself, applies to your face a layer of white lead powder, ground from rare and costly minerals. You know it's poisonous, of course. Everyone knows. But if it means being invited to dine with the pharaoh tonight, then a few minor risks are worth the price. The white lead is ground to a softness like clouds, and fixed onto your skin with a thin coat of diluted fat. After 3 layers, your complexion looks like it was crafted from moonlight mixed with milk, though it comes with the side effects of shallow breaths and a mild headache. But beautiful. Painfully beautiful. In ancient Egypt, a beautiful woman was one with flushed cheeks and red, luscious lips, as if she had just stolen a pomegranate from a sacred offering. And you? You would never allow your face to look like an unfinished mummy. Your maid brings out a pinch of hematite powder, a deep red pigment ground from minerals as firm as the priest's commandments, then mixes it with melted sheep fat, stirring with the care of someone preparing a holy sauce. They dab your cheeks, touch your lips, and even add a hint of plant resin for shine, so that if you smile at the pharaoh tonight, the light bouncing off your lips might go straight into his heart. If you're wondering why your lips taste sweet as sugar, remember this. Beauty in ancient Egypt wasn't just about appearance, it was about sensation. They say red lips are a sign of vitality. You believe red lips are proof that you hired the right woman to mix your pigments. Kohl, the legendary eye cosmetic. This black powder, made from galena, could make your eyes as deep and haunting as the soul of Anubis, or cause temporary blindness if it touched your cornea. You sit still, not blinking. Your handmaiden dips a wooden stick into the coal and begins to draw graceful curves around your eyes, extending from the corners like a feline's tail. This isn't just a style, it's a symbol. Cat eyes were considered a representation of Horus, protecting you from jealous stares. On bolder days, you might request a layer of green malachite across your eyelids, a hue as seductive as the Nile at dawn. You'd look as though you stepped out of a priest's dream, sacred yet unsettling enough to be unforgettable. Sparse eyebrows were a sign of being unblessed. And in the palace, no one dared appear unblessed. Your handmaiden takes charcoal ash or diluted coal, using a fine reed brush to draw each hair with the precision of hieroglyphs painted upon your skin. Arched brows, sharp as Seth's sickle, deliver a final verdict on your rank and refinement. Your lashes are darkened with a wand made from sheep's wool, soft but far from gentle, especially when your handmaiden's hands tremble ever so slightly. But the result? Flawless. Long curled lashes, as black as freshly inked scrolls in a temple library. And then, when all is done, you look into the mirror. From a nervous young woman, you've become a living goddess. white-skinned, red-lipped, deep-eyed, razor-browed. A beauty no longer merely human, but a silent warning to anyone who dares challenge your place. Your face is divine, your gaze lined like a falcon's wing, your lips dyed red as madder root, your cheeks flushed with powdered hematite. But if your dress doesn't match, it all collapses like a sacred water jar dropped by a drunken priest. The dress you're about to wear is woven from Egyptian linen, fabric so fine that even a whisper of wind from the Nile can lift it, as if it had a soul of its own. Linen was made from the flax plant, a sacred gift from the gods, growing along the fertile delta. Only the noble classes, especially the concubines of the royal harem, were allowed to wear the thinnest, whitest linen, woven so tightly it appeared almost transparent, yet never vulgar. It embodied a very Egyptian kind of purity, clothed but not concealed, because beauty need not hide, especially when it is seen as a hymn to the goddess Isis. You step backward into the gown, careful not to tangle the threads as delicate as breath, and tie it gently at the waist with a narrow silk ribbon. The dress brushes the ground, clinging to your body from shoulders to heels. At first glance it seems modest, but under the Egyptian sun you practically glow. Some concubines choose to add a thin outer shawl, especially when visiting temples or attending ceremonies. Not out of modesty, in fact admiring gazes are a daily spice, but out of reverence for sacred spaces. These shawls are usually pale, cream, Nile green, or soft gold, like sunlight woven into thread. Sometimes, if you're feeling rebellious, or simply want to make someone in the palace trip over their own gaze, you might choose a linen dress that's lightly sheer, hinting at the curves beneath like a mythic painting come to life. Ancient Egyptians did not associate nudity with shame. A clean, healthy, fragrant body was a sign that the gods favoured you. But no matter what you wear, the most important element is your attitude. The serenity in your steps, the perfectly timed bow when locking eyes with a priestess, and the gentle sideways smile when you catch the other concubine scanning you from head to toe, with a kind of envy that borders on art. In ancient Egypt, dressing beautifully wasn't about flaunting. It was about connecting with the gods, the land, the water, and with your truest self. You sit before a polished copper mirror so perfectly buffed it reflects even the dreamy flicker in your own eyes. After your face has been meticulously attended to, it's time for the next, equally vital step. Adornment. Because you are a concubine. And a concubine isn't just beautiful, she must dazzle. The first piece brought out by your handmaid, a piece every woman in the palace silently covets, is the broad collar. A magnificent wide-neck necklace crafted from hundreds of tiny beads, precious stones, coloured glass and faience, a signature glazed ceramic of Egypt, shimmering as if distilled from the Nile's sunlight. Each row of beads fans out like an open lotus, brushing your collarbones with cool weight, as if you're wearing a declaration. I belong to royalty. The colours are never random. Green symbolises vitality, naturally something you'll need to survive the competition of hundreds of concubines, especially since Pharaoh keeps no schedule. Red stands for energy, also for wine, lips, and long sultry nights. Your hands, already softened with perfumed oils of lotus and myrrh resin, still feel incomplete without bracelets and rings. 1. No. 2. Still insufficient. 3 bracelets per arm is the minimum, so when you raise a wine cup, the delicate clinking must be loud enough to make the serving girls look up in envy. The bracelets are made of gold, silver, deep red carnelian, midnight blue lapis lazuli, and turquoise, the sacred stone seen as a bridge between sky and earth. You turn slightly as your handmaid fastens into your ears a pair of crescent-shaped gold earrings. Worn only during rituals or on nights when you want Pharaoh to look at you for longer than a second. The chill of precious metal gliding across your earlobe sends a shiver down your spine. Not unpleasant, but potent. That's what power feels like. Of course, beauty alone isn't enough in a court full of schemes. You need amulets, not just to protect you from envious stares, but also from the lingering souls of those other concubines, who were never chosen. First is the Eye of Ujat, symbol of the god Horus, a protective force against all evil. It's worn close to the heart, as if to remind you, see not only with your eyes but with reason and intuition. Next, the scarab beetle. Not because you love insects, but because it represents rebirth and protection of the soul. Some say, should you ever fall from grace, at least your spirit will still find its way to the next life. And finally, the essential ankh, symbol of eternal life. Worn as a pendant or pinned to your garment, the ankh is a silent reminder. Even if Pharaoh's love fades by morning, even if today's favour becomes tomorrow's silence, something endures. At the very least, your legacy in the art of adornment. You rise. Every ornament is in place. In the golden flicker of the Egyptian morning, you are no longer just a woman. You are a statement. A flower jewelled with secrets. A gleaming mystery no one can overlook. And you haven't even left your chamber yet. Now comes the most important part. The one small pleasure you've been anticipating since the moment your eyes opened. Fragrance. Essential oils of myrrh, southern incense resin, and blue lotus are gently dabbed behind your ears, on your wrists and inside your elbows, those tender places where your pulse flutters softly beneath the skin. Your handmaid carefully places a small scented wax cone atop your hair, like a sweet crown, that will slowly melt under the Egyptian heat, releasing a delicate trail of floral and cinnamon notes with every step you take. A scent not overpowering, just enough to make anyone who comes near instinctively step back, and then, drawn in, take one step closer. Your morning, as a concubine of Egypt ranked among the inner elite of the royal harem, is not merely a silent procession through intoxicating aromas and cloud-like linens. No, you're not simply sitting idly, gazing at your reflection in the copper mirror and mourning a single curl that won't hold. There is an entire schedule, strict and sacred, awaiting you just beyond the curtain. Once your scented wax is in place and every jewel rests exactly where it should, as though placed by the hand of Hathor herself, you are gently escorted to the private temple within the palace grounds. There, white lotus petals float gracefully in golden inlaid bronze basins, and myrrh smoke drifts like sheer ribbons around the statue of the goddess, curling, spiralling, blessing. You walk slowly, very slowly, not because the pearl-embellished sandals are too slippery, but because you are dancing. Yes, dancing. Even if you're not a professional dancer, every concubine is taught a little of the sacred art of movement, a ritual dance of reverence. Your hands trace curves as soft as the waters of the Nile, and your eyes, they must lower, not too much, with controlled grace, humble, yet still shining with a quiet understanding of the universe. You've memorized hymns praising the goddess Isis, and even learned to breathe in rhythm while singing, not breathless but never overpowering the flute's gentle notes. When offering a lotus flower, your hands must lift it with both palms, your head bowing just low enough to remain elegant, as though presenting the most precious gift in your heart, even if the flower was freshly picked this morning from the pond behind the palace. On certain days, you may be chosen to assist in a temple ritual. Not blood sacrifice, that's for the priests. Your role is far more delicate, sprinkling scented water around the altar, laying flowers across the stone floor, and perhaps, if fortune favours you, reciting the prayer of the chosen one. As the name suggests, only those concubines noticed by Pharaoh are invited to perform it. To recite that verse is to be written into history, albeit in hieroglyphs. Some days the lines between the sacred and the royal blur, like incense vanishing into air. A single morning dance might be remembered as the trembling of Maat's divine wind. And if, by chance, an ibis flies overhead as you perform, congratulations, you've just become an omen of blessing. But don't forget, every gesture of yours is a small ritual. The way you sit, the softness of your smile, even how you raise your hand while speaking to a higher-ranking consort, all are part of a silent inherited code. At times, the way you pour water for a guest might be recorded as a symbol of devotion as gentle as the Nile's flow. This is Egypt, after all. Everything is mythologized, even the way you hold a cup. And then comes the hour of chanting lessons. The instructors, usually widows of temple priests, teach you to sing the ancient hymns of Osiris's rebirth, or of Bastet's protection over women. There was a time you spent an entire week just to master a single sustained note that lasted exactly 12 drum beats. Everyone said your voice was sweet, but the Queen's cat walked away mid-practice, and that made you slightly worried, that perhaps your tone had somehow offended Bastet herself. Still, you show up at the temple right on time. You still sing, you still dance, you are still chosen. No one in the harem is allowed to falter, because on any given day, Pharaoh might walk by just as you're offering incense, and with nothing more than a glance, your fate could change forever. Not to mention the presence of the high priests, always in immaculate white robes, their heads shaven to a polished sheen, gazing at the concubines with expressions half compassionate, half exacting. They don't speak much, they just take notes, a lot of them. Notes like, the woman who made the dynasty fragrant with a single dance, or the one who spilled oil on the statue of the god. You can't read those records, but you know they exist, and so you begin to walk a little more gently, smile a little more softly, and sing as if your voice might somehow carry across the palace, straight to Pharaoh's ears. After the rituals come breakfast, and in this world, the first meal of the day is not just food. It is a silent declaration of one's status, grace, and the favour of the gods. This is not the soft, fluffy bread of modern times, but it's also far from the coarse loaves made for slaves. You are served emmer bread, made from a rare, ancient strain of wheat, ground finely and kneaded by the most skilled bakers in the palace. It's flat, slightly soft, with a gentle sweetness of freshly baked grains. Sometimes its surface is brushed with crushed dates or liquid honey, like a kiss from the god happy upon your tongue. Your handmaidens carefully break the bread into bite-sized pieces, because your pearl-white teeth must be protected. After all, you've brushed them with a paste of sea salt and aromatic herbs. You can't risk a hard crust undoing all that work. You don't lift a finger. You lean gently against cushions, listening to distant music echo softly through the halls, while watching a fruit platter being presented to you as though you were a living goddess. On a gold-plated copper plate, the fruits are arranged in a spiral. Plump grapes, ripe figs, sweet dates, sometimes drizzled with honey to enhance their aroma. You don't peel them. Noble women do not peel fruit. That is the task of the handmaidens, hands soft as morning air, carefully removing each thin skin like petals from a flower, so you may enjoy only the purest, most exquisite part of every fruit. You may have heard that ancient Egyptians drank beer instead of water. That's true, but the beer you drink is not the kind consumed by pyramid builders. Yours is a light barley beer, nearly alcohol-free, naturally fermented using traditional yeast. It drinks like cool spring water, soothing and good for digestion. This is morning beer, as gentle as the sun god Ra's greeting at dawn. If today you desire something richer, goat's milk or cow's milk is poured from cool ceramic jars, a rare luxury reserved for the upper class. For in Egypt, cattle herding is not mere agriculture, it's an art. The milk is chilled by burying the jars beneath sun-baked bricks, an ingenious cooling method in a world without ice, preserving the creamy, sweet floral flavour of this prized liquid. Not every morning brings something special, but if today is a festival day, or good news has come from the temple, a perfectly boiled goose egg might appear on your silver plate, its golden yolk glowing like sunlight shining through a linen veil. Or perhaps a small piece of sun-dried fish, salted and cured for exactly 3 days, just enough to make the flavour bold, but not overpowering. It is served with safflower oil, mild and fragrant, like Egyptian olive oil, keeping the fish rich but never dry. You may also be given a small bowl of mashed beans, mixed with coriander and a splash of aged vinegar, an ancient Egyptian version of hummus. You dip your emmer bread into it slowly, gracefully, as though offering a prayer to the goddess Isis with every bite. You eat in silence, under the soft morning light, accompanied by bird song and the faint scent of incense drifting from the distant temple. Your handmaid pours a little more milk and wipes your hands with a lotus-scented linen cloth. This is not merely breakfast. It is the ritual that begins the day of the chosen one. Your stomach, now soothed by sweet date syrup and soft, fragrant bread, is ready for the next ritual of the day. A handmaiden gently guides you into a cool, stone-tiled room, where golden sunlight filters through silk curtains, casting shimmering patterns across the floor. This isn't a library in the modern sense, but it is a sanctuary of knowledge, a sacred space where concubines are taught the wisdom that helps them grow both mentally and spiritually. An elderly priestess, her silver hair braided into delicate strands, waits for you beside a small ebony table. On it lie strips of papyrus, densely inscribed with symbols, Egyptian hieroglyphs, a script that serves not only as a record of words, but as a bridge between humans and the gods. You're handed a reed pen, light as air, yet every stroke of ink carries the weight of an entire world. Ankh, life. Mat, balance. Ka, soul. You don't just learn to read. You learn to understand, to grasp the sacred meanings buried deep within the Egyptian consciousness. The priestess tells you about Maat, the goddess who wears an ostrich feather upon her head, the very symbol of order, truth, and justice. From this day forward, every word you speak, every action you take must align with her principles. Because one day, when you die, your heart will be weighed against her feather. Only if your heart is as light as that feather will your soul pass into the next world. Sometimes the lesson shifts into storytelling. You listen to tales of Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, who gave writing to humankind. In these moments, you feel as if you're sitting in the slow-moving current of time, where each symbol holds sacred meaning. Nothing is random in the world of pharaohs. You study so that you will not be lost in the maze of rituals and ceremonies. You study so that you may speak wisely when conversing with other concubines, or perhaps, one day, with Pharaoh himself. In a world where a single phrase might be carved into tomb walls to last 1,000 years, intellect is the lightest weapon, yet the sharpest one. Outside the window, the faint sound of a harp strings drifts in, soft as the Nile breeze. The lesson ends, and you remind yourself, knowledge is a kind of perfume, a fragrance you wear even if no one can see it. You've spent your morning immersed in the written word, your mind gently cleansed by the philosophy of Maat, and now it is time for your body to rest, to be indulged in the precious stillness of midday. Outside, the Egyptian sun blazes fiercely, hot enough to burn the paving stones, but within the linen-draped calm of your small chamber, the world softens. A breeze slips in through the shuttered window, stirring the sheer linen curtains and revealing sunlight that glitters like powdered gold. Beside you, a handmaiden stands quietly, fanning you with a rhythm as steady as a lullaby. 1, 2, 1, 2, as if echoing the cradle songs your mother once sang. The air is filled with the scent of incense, a whisper of fragrant wood, a drop of lotus oil on hot coals. You feel yourself drifting, like a bark floating down the Nile at dusk. Your meal is simple, not lavish, but thoughtful, like your place within the palace. A small wooden tray rests neatly on a low stand, perfectly positioned so you can reach it, while seated cross-legged on your cushion. The flatbread from breakfast is still with you, but now it has been cleverly warmed on hot stones and drizzled with a touch of flaxseed oil. It's served alongside crisp, fresh greens, romaine lettuce, crunchy cucumber, and paper-thin slices of Egyptian radish, gently tossed in a mild grape vinegar. There's no meat in the salad, but its cool, clean flavour feels like biting into a stream of water on a summer's noon, fresh, bright, alive. And the fish? Oh, yes. Just a small piece of Nile river fish, grilled earlier that morning, cooled to perfection, and seasoned with herbs and a few grains of salt from the desert mines of the west. You take a delicate bite, just enough to melt on your tongue, with the taste of charcoal, wind, and river, a flavour only those born near the Nile could ever truly know. Your handmaiden gently places a small glazed ceramic dish into your lap. Inside, a dessert of fruit, glowing brown dates, tender ripe figs, chilled grapes kept cool since dawn, topped with toasted sesame seeds that crackle sweetly between your teeth. No honey needed. Nature has done the sweetening. You sip from a clay jug of pomegranate juice, red as a heartbeat, cooled all morning in a well. Each mouthful is like a kiss from the earth. Cool, a little tart, a little sweet, and deeply, unmistakably Egyptian. You don't eat much. No one in the harem eats heavily at midday. It's not about weight. It never has been. It's about movement. Too full, and your spine won't arch, your neck won't tilt as gracefully in the evening dances for the gods. Beauty is duty, you once heard an older concubine say, and now you understand. To preserve your form is not to tempt men, but to honour Hathor, goddess of beauty and music. You eat lightly, reverently, like one offering grace to the divine. Some of your handmaidens usually taste the food before you do, partly to ensure its freshness, partly to make sure you don't accidentally eat something suspicious. After all, in a palace where affection is currency, clumsy little schemes are not uncommon, and a single, strange-tasting piece of fish could mean 3 days bedridden, missing an important ritual offering. But today is different. Everything is gentle. The food, the light, the rhythm of the fan, even the pace of your own breathing feels slower than usual. There's no need to smile, no need to speak. You simply chew softly, sip slowly, and listen to the tiniest sounds around you. The soft buzzing of insects under the tiled roof, the faint rustle of linen as you adjust your sleeve, the footsteps of a handmaiden crossing the tiled floor, and music from the next room, a harp plucking a few dreamy notes, as if forgotten by someone's dream. The sun now stands directly overhead, pouring dazzling gold across the Nile. While men working the fields retreat into the shade, you have the rare privilege of resting in quiet serenity, where even sound feels sifted gently through the breeze from the river. You return to your own quarters, a small, soft room tucked deep within the inner palace. Your bed is not high, just a low wooden frame near the floor layered with woven papyrus mats. Upon it sits a carved wooden headrest, elegant and simple, believed by the ancients to help align the body's inner energy while resting. The window is veiled in white linen. A breeze comes through gently, causing the curtain to sway like silk waves lapping against the sunlight. The light that enters is not harsh, but milky, wrapping you in a blanket of stillness and calm. Just outside, in a shaded garden lined with palm trees, a small lotus pond lies quiet. A flamingo steps carefully along its edge, occasionally dipping its beak into the water as if whispering some forgotten spell. The scent of grass, the sharp tang of tree resin, and the faint perfume of lotus blossoms all blend together, as if singing you a lullaby made of fragrance. You sip a light juice to stay hydrated, usually date water infused with a few drops of licorice root, cooling you from within. If you're lucky, you're brought a small cup of herbal tea, lavender or dried mint boiled with a spoon of honey, a scent both soothing and warm. On some days, you're even gifted a honey candy wrapped in a whisper of cinnamon, melting slowly on your tongue, as sweet and delicate as a love confession left unspoken. Now begins the time for leisure. Not loud, not ostentatious, but a refined blend of ease, culture, and the art of living. You and several other royal consorts gather in the common chamber, where the sunlight reflects off polished bronze mirrors, casting shimmering patterns that dance across the walls. A Senate board is brought out, an ancient Egyptian board game dating back to when the pyramids were still under construction. The wooden board is carved with rectangular patterns, divided into small squares. Ivory-coloured ceramic pieces are set in place, each player choosing their path, and the game begins with a toss of small knuckle bones to determine movement. You don't need to win. In fact, you often lose, and that's part of your charm. Each loss is met with playful laughter or a mock pout so endearing that everyone else can't help but smile. One woman keeps score, another pretends to be a stern judge, and someone else, or perhaps it's you, sneaks a piece into a better position when no one's watching. But no one minds. The joy is in the playing, not the winning. Amid the game, someone recites a love poem. It might be copied from ancient tomb inscriptions or newly composed, yet it always begins with elegant phrases like, "O you, whose eyes shine like the crescent moon," or "You're gentle like the Nile breeze at dawn." Flattering verses for the pharaoh are woven in with subtle humour, just enough to make listeners giggle, unsure whether it's praise or a joke. Then comes story time, whispered tales of last night's dreams. Who did the pharaoh call by name? Who walked with him through the moonlit gardens? Who received the turquoise inlaid necklace? Nothing is certain, but every tale is told with glinting eyes and half smiles, as if all are part of a play where no script is needed. Later, a select few, those favoured and trusted by the pharaoh, are invited to a hieroglyphics lesson. You are among them. The teacher, usually a scribe from the Temple of Thoth, arrives with papyrus scrolls and reed pens. The lesson isn't long, but demands focus, for each hieroglyph is not just a letter, but a symbol, a sacred meaning wrapped in form. To study is a privilege. Not everyone in the palace is allowed to learn, and fewer still may access the wisdom of the gods. For you, it's both an honour and a quiet test. The pharaoh watches, not directly, but through his messengers, to see who truly understands the doctrine of Mayat and who merely wears its appearance. A small writing mistake might earn a gentle correction, but a misunderstanding of sacred truth, that could tilt your entire standing in the royal court, like a boat thrown off course by an unexpected gust of wind. When the lesson ends, you return to the lotus garden behind the palace. A group of women musicians is already assembled beneath the shade of a large fig tree, holding small harps, reed flutes, and hand drums wrapped in soft animal skin. The music begins, gentle like rippling water, melodic like wind through palm leaves. Some hum softly along, some sit in silence, eyes fluttering shut in contented drowsiness. And you sink into a low seat, let your head rest back, and allow your eyes to close, slowly, gently, surrounded by ancient melodies, filtered sunlight through fig leaves, and a midday dream that feels as though it were woven 1,000 years ago. You lie still for a moment in the small room built of sun-baked clay and river mortar. The walls are hand-painted with natural pigments, earthy red, deep green, depicting the goddess Hathor dancing beneath the moon. The air has grown cooler after a day scorched by the blazing sun. Outside, the Egyptian sky is shifting, its glimmering turquoise turning to amber, then to a pomegranate deep crimson. Egrets perch atop the palm trees, gently bobbing their heads, as if to whisper, "It is almost time." A handmaiden enters, her long braids neat, her skin bronze and gleaming with a secretive smile. "You've been chosen," she whispers. You sit up, your heart beating softly within your chest like the temple's skin drum. To be chosen to meet the pharaoh at sunset is an honour few are granted, and you know this well. It is not only about love, it is about power, status, and survival. In this world, to catch the king's eye could change your destiny in a single night. 2 handmaidens bring in a terracotta basin filled with warm lotus water. You immerse yourself, breathing in the subtle scent of myrrh resin and the faint spice of frankincense. They take soft linen cloths and gently wash your body, their motions slow, reverent, like one might use to polish a sacred statue. The incense ritual begins. Wisps of scented smoke rise around your hair, your shoulders, your neck, twisting like divine serpents in a sacred dance. They rub a special oil into your skin, starting at the shoulders, a blend of jasmine extract and moringa oil, cool to the touch and long-lasting in fragrance. This oil is more than perfume. It is a mark. It says, you are prepared, you are sanctified for the ritual, and of course there is makeup. Your eyes are lined with thick black kohl, extended sharply like the tail feathers of a hawk. Beautiful, yes, but also believed to ward off evil and protect against the sun. Your lips are painted deep carmine red, a paste made from crushed insects mixed with goat fat. The smell is slightly metallic, but the colour will not fade easily. You barely dare to move your mouth. The dress. A single layer of ultra-fine white linen, sheer and clinging to your figure. Shoulders bare, the waist cinched with a golden sash. Real gold. Around your neck lies a necklace of dark blue lapis lazuli, interwoven with blood-red carnelian, colours of protection and royal authority. Silver bangles, long earrings. You feel like you are transforming into a living idol, a sacred statue come to life. As you step into the palace's inner courtyard, the sunset blazes across the Nile. Rays of light reflect off stone columns, across the painted walls depicting gods and goddesses, and even shimmer on the polished bronze mirrors held by the palace musicians. The pharaoh sits on the throne, his back straight, wearing the striped blue and gold Nemes headdress. 2 priests stand beside him, their white robes fluttering softly in the evening breeze. The musicians begin to play, harps, frame drums, and you know the moment has arrived. You bow deeply, lowering yourself to kiss the base of the throne. No one forces you, but in the Egyptian court, unspoken laws need no enforcement. The pharaoh's eyes settle on you. That gaze may be warm, or it may be testing. No one truly knows what the pharaoh thinks, for he is the son of Ra, the bearer of Mayat, the sacred order of the universe. You say nothing. You only lower your head and begin to dance. Every movement, every sweep of the hand has been practiced hundreds of times inside a dim stone chamber under flickering oil lamps. But this time is different, because the pharaoh is watching, and so is the entire royal harem. You don't forget to smile, your secret weapon. Not too radiant, not too submissive, just enough to spark curiosity. The performance ends. Perhaps you'll be asked to stay, to speak with him. Perhaps only a nod will be offered, but even that matters. Every glance from the pharaoh is a step forward. In the harem, everything is a game of power. Not everyone schemes, but everyone understands. To be chosen means better food, finer clothes, and maybe, just maybe, one day your name will be carved into a stone stele at the Temple of Karnak with the inscription, "Beloved consort of the son of Ra." But if your name is not called tonight, it is not an ending. It is an interlude, a quiet pause that allows your heart to prepare once more. The sun will still rise in the east, pouring its honey-gold light across the flat stone courtyards of the palace. You exhale gently and return to the dance chamber, where incense lingers in the air and the soft sound of the harp whispers like water caressing stone. You extend your arms, softly, gracefully. Your bare feet touch the cool stone floor, and you've learned how to move without a sound, as if you are a breeze or a ribbon of silk gliding through sacred halls. In the corner of the room stands an elderly dance mistress, her voice chanting ancient hymns in hieroglyphic script passed down through generations. You whisper along, each syllable sounding like pomegranate seeds falling onto stone tiles. Some days you dance wearing silver bangles that catch the light. Other days you hold a small sistrum, shaking it gently to create a sacred chime, like the voice of the goddess Isis calling forth the sun. One morning the old musician brings a small harp made of ebony. He hands it to you, letting you pluck each string, the notes so fine they seem like dewdrops falling on linen. Your heart settles. There's no need to rush. You don't need to be chosen yet. If today you dance more beautifully than yesterday, if today your song is sweeter than yesterday, that is enough. You return to your private quarters with a few of the other women. Sitting together beneath the shade of the bougainvillea trellis, you listen to their stories. You continue to learn. On a wooden board, the overseer draws symbols in black ink. You watch and read aloud, word by word, sun, lotus, love, pharaoh. The words drift gently into your dreams. Then it's time to learn embroidery. Every tiny stitch, every design of falcon gods or scarabs. Some days you thread pearls onto linen strands, dreaming of the moment you might wear them as you walk through the grand hall outside the Temple of Ra. Between you and the other women there are no fights, no shouting matches, but something sharper than a blade still cuts through the silence, more refined than words. It's the way a glance slides past another in the hallway, the tilt of a smile when one girl wears a newer, brighter linen dress. It's how you sing, softer, slower, drawing out the final note so it lingers in the hearts of those who hear. You understand. In this Egyptian palace, a gown with a sweeter scent, a final note that warms the air, a step that makes no sound at all. These small things can make you stand out, can bring your name to the pharaoh's lips. But you also know, power here is never loud. It lies in the tilt of the head, the placement of a hand upon your chest when bowing before a stone idol, in the stillness, like the Nile turning in its sleep beneath the moonlight. Affection, power, jealousy, all hidden behind a gentle smile. When the sun god Ra retreats to the world beyond and darkness drapes itself over the carved stone walls filled with mythological patterns, the hearts of every concubine begin to beat a little faster. This is the hour when the bracelet engraved with the falcon's head, the symbol of favour, is brought forth by an elderly courtier with silver-threaded hair. She says nothing, only bows her head and extends her hand. And just like that, you have been chosen. The handmaidens prepare you with meticulous care. Your hair is braided into smooth coils, dusted with perfumed powder, and adorned with fresh lotus blossoms. A blend of almond oil and jasmine is gently rubbed over your body, softening the skin, giving a subtle sheen to your shoulders so that every movement shimmers beneath the lamplight. You wear a linen gown as thin as a summer cicada's wing, translucent, whisper-light, revealing the sun-kissed tone of your Egyptian skin. A delicate golden cord cinches your waist, not to hold the dress, but to emphasize the curve of your figure. Your lips are painted with carmine, red pigment crushed from desert insects against stone. Your eyes are lined with deep black kohl, sharp as the gaze of a desert cat, so that even in silence, your presence makes hearts stutter. You step into the cool stone corridor, lit quietly by flickering oil lamps. 2 maids lead the way, their footsteps as soft as the sacred cat goddess Bastet. Your shadow stretches long along the walls, blending with carved figures of gods, Anubis, Seth, making you feel as though you're walking within a living papyrus scroll. The pharaoh's chamber is not the golden vault of legends. There is only a bed of dark ebony wood, a few embroidered curtains, the faint curl of incense, and the silver light of the moon pouring through a stone window. The pharaoh sits on a long ebony bench, his feet resting on a golden pedestal, a cup of pomegranate wine in his hand. He wears a robe of white silk loosely draped, the open neckline revealing sun-darkened skin and faint scars from battles with the Hittites. What historians would one day call the masculine beauty of the ancient world. You bow deeply, gracefully, but not without glancing up. There is a flutter of nerves in your chest, a hint of challenge in your eyes. Tonight, you are not a servant. You are an invitation. The pharaoh gestures. You step forward, each footfall accompanied by the soft chime of your bracelets, like music echoing from another world. It feels as though Hathor herself is dancing through your body. You kneel, not on a cushion, but at the feet of the most powerful man in Egypt. No one remembers exactly what came first. Was it the pharaoh's deep laughter when you spoke of the scent of myrrh? Was it the moment you sang a short song about the wind on the Nile, and he gently touched your back to feel the breeze? Or perhaps it was when you both drank pomegranate wine from a 2-handled golden cup, and then collapsed onto the bed together, the wine far stronger than either of you expected. All that's certain is, everything that followed unfolded like ancient poetry. You were not merely a concubine, you were a goddess on that bed, in that moment. A soft breeze from the Nile stirs the curtain. The room is heavy with the scent of skin, jasmine oil, and the sweat of 2 intertwined bodies. You lie on your side, head resting on the arm that has cradled many before you, but tonight he calls you my sky. The pharaoh has fallen asleep. He lies on his side like a stone statue, yet one leg still touches yours, as if to make sure you haven't disappeared. You gaze up at the ceiling painted with mythical stars. Perhaps tomorrow you will be gifted a new bracelet, or even a house by the river. Perhaps you will never be summoned again, but that doesn't matter, because you, a daughter of Egypt, in the heart of a dream-drenched night, have lived a night as a goddess. As the first light of Ra begins to stain the sky gold, you are quietly escorted back to your room. No one asks, no one stares, because in the palace, every emotion must remain hidden, like the silk curtains behind the temple doors. You may press a single lotus petal from the pharaoh's chamber into your soft leather journal. You may sketch the dream you had, riding Horus, the falcon god, over golden dunes and silent valleys. Even if no one sees it, you know, that night was something sacred, and if that night you were not chosen, it's all right. The heavy stone door closes behind you, making way for another world, where darkness is not an ending, but a different beginning. You return to your room, passing through a colonnade etched with lotus flowers. The scent of resin still clings faintly to your robe. Your room is small but quiet enough. A single oil lamp flickers on a shelf, its flame breathing gently. Outside, insects sing, and soft music drifts in from somewhere far. Perhaps another concubine playing her sistrum to lull herself to sleep. You lie down on a low mattress, pulling a soft linen shawl over yourself. On the wall, the dancing flame paints moving shadows, like the echoes of a dance still lingering in your mind. You close your eyes, your heartbeat aligning with the rhythm of hand drums still echoing in memory. Night in the harem isn't truly lonely. It has its own rhythm, slow, secretive, and full of meaning. A handmaiden passes quietly, placing a jar of water at your door. Another comes by wordlessly, gently removes the heavy carnelian necklace from your neck, then slips away, silent as sand through fingers. You let out a soft sigh, not of regret, but of something real, the feeling that you still have time. Every night of not being chosen is a night to listen to yourself, to recall the song you practiced at dusk, to imagine the pharaoh smiling at you, his gaze like the sun lighting up your small world. You whisper your nighttime prayer, a quiet invocation to Bez, protector of sleep and banisher of nightmares. His name is carved onto a small amulet under your pillow, his image endearing and odd. A squat dwarf god with shaggy beard, his face stern but kind. Sometimes, a friend from the next room sneaks in to lie beside you, giggling softly. "Dance with me again tomorrow," you hear her whisper, and together you nestle under the thin linen cloth, trading stories of dreams where the pharaoh noticed you. You know every girl here shares the same dream and the same reality, to live, to wait, and to hope. But in that waiting, you grow. Quietly, gracefully, like a morning lotus in bloom. Egyptian nights are not just for stillness. They are when your soul dances its own private choreography, a performance for no one's eyes but your own. You dream of standing in Karnak Temple, bathed in silver moonlight, harp in hand, your braided hair falling down your back, eyes gazing toward the eternal flame, where the souls of pharaohs rest. It is a dream gentle as wind slipping through a stone doorway, unseen but deeply, undeniably real. The life of Kia, the beloved wife of Akhenaten. Around 1353 BCE, ancient Egypt entered a time of great upheaval under the reign of Pharaoh Akhenaten, the king known for his radical religious reforms. He abandoned the traditional polytheistic beliefs in favour of worshipping a single deity, Aten, the sun disk. Akhenaten established a new capital city, Akhetaten, modern-day Tel El Amarna, and reshaped the political and religious order entirely. Beside his powerful and famous great royal wife, Nefertiti, Akhenaten had a particularly special consort named Kia, a woman referred to by the rare title, the beloved wife. Although she never bore the title of queen, Kia appears in many court records and images, and even had her own tomb and artifacts, a rare honour for a secondary wife in the Egyptian royal harem. Kia was not a minor background figure. She was a mysterious presence, an essential yet often overlooked piece in the dramatic narrative of the Amarna period, a short-lived but highly controversial era in ancient Egyptian history. Amid the powerful female figures of the Amarna court, from the sharp-witted Nefertiti to royal princesses like Meriteten, Kia stood out as a gentler, quieter but no less enigmatic presence. She did not enter history with stories of palace-born splendour, nor did she carry the noble bloodline of Egyptian royalty. Kia stepped into the chronicles of ancient Egypt quietly, her origins obscure and her background uncertain, yet her legacy is undeniable. To this day, archaeologists and historians have not determined Kia's true origins. What is certain is that she was not an Egyptian princess, as her name never appeared with the title Daughter of the Pharaoh, a designation commonly attached to royal women. So, who was Kia? There are theories suggesting Kia may have been a foreign princess, sent to Egypt as part of a diplomatic alliance. Some researchers lean toward the hypothesis that she came from the kingdom of Mitanni, in present-day Syria-Turkey, which had close diplomatic ties with Egypt during the New Kingdom. Some even connect Kia's name to Tadukhipa, a Mitanni princess who was married to King Amenhotep III, Akhenaten's father, and may have become a consort to Akhenaten after his ascension. However, no definitive archaeological evidence confirms that Kia and Tadukhipa were the same person. Many modern scholars now believe that Kia may not have been of royal birth at all, perhaps an ordinary Egyptian woman or a member of the lower nobility, chosen by Akhenaten and elevated out of personal affection. It is precisely this ambiguity that makes Kia so captivating, a woman without power or royal lineage, yet able to win the heart of one of the most eccentric and powerful pharaohs in Egyptian history. What set Kia apart from the other royal consorts was a unique title inscribed on several artifacts from the royal household. On some wooden chests, stone vessels and statuettes unearthed at the capital city of Akhetaten, archaeologists found the following inscription: "The greatly beloved wife of the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, living in truth, Kia. Though her origins remain unknown, and her name appears rarely in ancient texts, Kia is a figure who has compelled generations of historians, archaeologists and writers to search, speculate and imagine. The obscurity surrounding her background has not diminished her role in the Amarna court. On the contrary, it is precisely this ambiguity that has elevated her status as one of the most mysterious women in ancient Egyptian history. Her life intertwined with power, affection, and one of the most turbulent chapters in Egypt's religious evolution. In the intricate hierarchy of royal women in ancient Egypt, for a concubine to be mentioned by name was already rare. But Kia, neither the great royal wife nor of noble blood, was featured in a number of artifacts with remarkable prominence. Her name appeared not only on carved reliefs and luxurious wooden boxes, but also associated with her own tomb, and depicted in intimate scenes alongside Pharaoh Akhenaten, something almost no other secondary wife ever attained. Artifacts bearing her name have been discovered in Amarna, the city built by Akhenaten to worship Aten. These include fine wooden cosmetic boxes, exquisitely decorated pottery, and even small statues showing Kia in affectionate or close proximity to the pharaoh, imagery typically reserved for queens or official wives. Some archaeologists believe she may have once had a tomb of her own, possibly KV-55, though the identity of the occupant of that tomb remains hotly debated. With the rare title, the greatly beloved wife of the king, an unusual designation in the royal records of Egypt, Kia is recognised as a woman of considerable influence within Akhenaten's harem. What makes this even more remarkable is the fact that her name is never accompanied by divine or ritual elements, indicating that Kia did not participate in major religious functions as many queens did. While Nefertiti served as the public face of Akhenaten's religious and political revolution, frequently depicted in grand ceremonies, wearing the blue crown and standing beside the king at Aten's altar, Kia was portrayed in more personal, intimate settings, seated near Akhenaten, exchanging glances, or embracing a small child. There is no record of Kia taking part in Atenist rituals, which marks a striking contrast to the nearly equal public status Nefertiti held with the pharaoh. One might say that if Nefertiti represented power, then Kia embodied personal affection and closeness in royal life. One of the most prominent theories surrounding Kia is her possible role as the mother of Tutankhamun, the most famous pharaoh in Egyptian history. While there is no definitive evidence, several clues have led scholars to lean toward this possibility. The period in which Kia is documented in artifacts coincides with the likely birth time frame of Tutankhamun. The affection Akhenaten showed toward her might suggest a romantic relationship that resulted in children. Some wooden boxes inscribed with her name also depict children, something highly uncommon unless the woman had borne offspring for the king. Though the truth remains elusive, these signs suggest that Kia may have played a far more pivotal role in Egypt's royal lineage than her enigmatic background would first suggest. However, there is no official record confirming that Kia was the mother of Tutankhamun. DNA analyses of the boy king's mummy suggest that his mother was a woman of royal blood, a detail that contradicts the theory that Kia lacked noble lineage. Still, it's possible that Kia's origins have been misunderstood or deliberately concealed, and that she may indeed have had a royal connection that remains unidentified. Perhaps nothing intrigues Egyptologists more than the sudden and complete disappearance of a once prominent figure like Kia. Despite her relatively frequent appearances in earlier years, by year 11 of Akhenaten's reign, her name vanishes entirely from inscriptions and surviving monuments, a complete erasure with no clear explanation. During the early and middle years of Akhenaten's rule, Kia was one of the few women consistently depicted in reliefs, carvings, and inscriptions. Yet, in the final years of the Amarna period, especially after year 11, her presence is abruptly wiped from the historical record. There is no mention of her death, no record of a funeral. The sudden disappearance of a woman who was clearly granted a prominent role has sparked numerous scholarly theories. What's particularly strange is that her name was deliberately chiselled out or overwritten, with the names of other royal women, most notably Meriteten, the eldest daughter of Nefertiti and Akhenaten. Several wooden statuettes and cosmetic boxes once bearing Kia's name were later reinscribed with Meriteten's. Such alterations were not casual. Name erasure in ancient Egypt was a serious act, typically reserved for those who fell out of favour or needed to be obliterated from collective memory. Although definitive evidence is lacking, Modern scholars have put forward several compelling theories regarding Kia's mysterious disappearance. She may have died young, possibly due to childbirth complications, a common cause of death even among royal women in ancient Egypt. The removal of her name could simply reflect her no longer serving a purpose in the court after her passing. However, the thorough and systematic erasure of her name suggests more than just a natural death. It appears intentional and politically motivated. She may have fallen out of favour with Akhenaten, or become embroiled in internal palace conflicts. If she lost the king's affection, she could have been stripped of her titles, exiled, or even executed. In this scenario, erasing her from official records would serve to protect the royal image and eliminate reminders of a disgraced consort. She may have become a political threat to Nefertiti or her daughter Mereteten. As Nefertiti's religious and political influence grew, Kia, with her more private and emotional bond with the king, may have been seen as an obstacle. Considering the complex political dynamics of the Amarna court, it's not unreasonable to suspect that rivalries and power struggles among royal women played a role in Kia's removal. She may have opposed Akhenaten's radical religious reforms. Unlike Nefertiti, who frequently appeared in Aten worship rituals, Kia was never depicted participating in such ceremonies. This absence suggests that she might have held traditional religious views and resisted the shift to Atenism. As the regime increasingly revolved around the Aten cult, someone like Kia, possibly seen as ideologically incompatible, would be quietly pushed aside. So, what might the true reason be? The disappearance of Kia from historical records has also made identifying her tomb and mummy incredibly difficult. No burial site has been definitively linked to her, but scholars have proposed several possibilities. The young woman in Tomb Cave 35. This is the mummy of a young woman found in the tomb of Amenhotep II, estimated to have died around age 20. She had striking features and was identified through modern DNA analysis as the biological mother of Tutankhamun. If the theory that Kia was Tutankhamun's mother is accurate, then this mummy could very well be her. The female remains in KV-55. This tomb was originally believed to belong to Akhenaten, but at some point, the remains of an unidentified female were also interred there. Some suggest this could have been Kia. However, most of the evidence has been damaged or destroyed, and no clear proof links this mummy to her. Complete destruction. During the religious purge, if Kia was a victim of the political and religious purges that followed Akhenaten's death, then her tomb and remains may have been deliberately destroyed alongside the temples of Aten. Under Tutankhamun's reign, there was a revival of the old religious order, and many monuments and figures associated with the Amarna period were systematically erased. Anything connected to Kia may have been lost in this wave of restoration and retaliation. Although she was not an official queen, lacked religious titles, and vanished from history after a brief period, Kia still left a powerful mark on Akhenaten's court. She was among the very few women to be depicted and named alongside the pharaoh, not in ritualistic political ceremonies, but in intimate emotional scenes from daily life. Overshadowed by monumental figures like Akhenaten and Nefertiti, Kia's mystery has become her legacy, turning her into a source of endless fascination in both literature and cinema. In fictional novels and films set during the Amarna period, one of the most tumultuous yet short-lived eras in ancient Egyptian history, Kia is often portrayed as a captivating, gentle woman, swept up in the brutal currents of palace politics. Works like Akhenaten, Dweller in Truth by Nobel laureate Naguib Mahfouz, though they do not mention Kia by name, have helped shape the archetype of characters like her, ambiguous, forgotten women who nonetheless hold the key to deeper truths about power, love, and human nature during the Amarna era. On screen, Kia is typically depicted as a tragic figure, a woman who truly loved in a time when marriages were forged for politics, not affection. When set against the commanding strategic presence of Nefertiti, Kia often serves as an emotional counterbalance, soft, quiet, and ultimately crushed beneath the ruthless machinery of royal ambition. Many modern researchers argue that Kia's image has transcended history. She has come to represent thousands of women who once lived within ancient palaces, women whose names were never recorded in chronicles, but who played critical roles in personal relationships, dynastic succession, and even in shaping religious or political decisions. Kia, therefore, stands not just as an individual mystery, but as a symbol of forgotten power, emotional depth, and the silent influence of women throughout antiquity. The silence of archaeological records becomes a space filled with evocative possibilities. Was Kia deliberately erased from history? Was it because she opposed the influence of Nefertiti, or simply because she was not born into the right bloodline? This mystery is precisely what draws the fascination of the modern scholars, writers, and filmmakers. Could Kia represent the countless women who were erased from history simply because they didn't fit the narrative the victors wanted to tell? Kia's story is not just a faint echo of an individual figure. It has become a symbol of the rediscovery of women's roles in ancient history. Postmodern research on gender, politics, and power often cites Kia as a prime example in asking, who gets remembered? Who is forgotten? And can history be rewritten, not only with tales of conquest and monuments, but also with the whispers of those who once existed yet were denied a voice? Kia, the beloved wife, remains one of the most mysterious and haunting female figures of the Amarna period. No one knows where she came from, what her real name was, or what her death meant. What remains are only a few lone inscriptions on broken statues, a cosmetic box bearing her name, and traces chiselled out of temple walls. Yet it is precisely this obscurity that makes Kia special. In a time of upheaval, when Akhenaten overthrew traditional religion and Nefertiti ruled as an equal to the pharaoh, Kia seemed like only a small piece of the puzzle. But that piece might be the key to understanding what really unfolded within the royal court. The rivalries, the schemes, and the honest love stories amid a world built on appearances. Kia's story is not merely a footnote in the history of ancient Egypt. It is a mirror reflecting themes that still resonate today: power, religion, gender, erasure, and imagination. In a modern world striving to restore the voices of those whom history has forgotten, Kia stands as a vivid, if faint, reminder that sometimes those who seem to be erased are the ones who help us understand the past most deeply. And so, among the 1,000-year-old stone statues, the name Kia still whispers through time, a quiet reminder that no one truly disappears as long as someone remembers. Mummification in ancient Egypt. When we think of ancient Egypt, the first image that comes to most people's minds isn't the towering pyramids or the majestic stone statues, it's the mummies. Human bodies miraculously preserved for thousands of years, still with skin, hair, nails, and sometimes even facial expressions that appear as if they are simply asleep. Mummification stands as one of the most iconic and haunting symbols of ancient Egyptian civilization, evoking both mystery and reverence for a culture that devoted immense effort to preparing for death, a way of living oriented toward eternity. However, to understand mummification is not merely to examine the techniques used to preserve the body. It is a core aspect of the ancient Egyptian worldview, reflecting deep beliefs about life after death, the soul, rebirth, and the connection between the body, spirit, and the divine. To the ancient Egyptians, death was not an end, but a transition into another form of existence, an eternal life in the afterworld, where the soul would continue its journey with full consciousness, emotion, and identity. To ensure this journey could take place, the body had to be preserved intact, as Egyptians believed the soul, Ba, and life force, Ka, would return to visit the body. If the body was damaged or lost, the soul would become aimless, unable to attain immortality. Thus, mummification was not simply a medical procedure or burial custom. It was a sacred ritual of profound religious and social significance. Though it initially was reserved for pharaohs and nobles, the art of mummification gradually became available to priests, soldiers, and even commoners, provided they could afford it. Over thousands of years, the techniques became increasingly sophisticated, involving complex steps carried out over months and requiring careful coordination among priests, physicians, and skilled artisans. The topic of mummification also opens a window into broader issues such as social hierarchy, the role of religion, advances in ancient medicine, and the human response to death. Even today, mummies continue to speak, not only through scientific analysis, but also through their deep cultural resonance in films, novels, and the popular imagination. The mummification process in ancient Egypt spanned several weeks, reflecting both the medical knowledge and deep religious beliefs of the time. After a person's death, their body was swiftly brought to a place known as the House of the Embalmer, a type of mummification workshop usually located near the banks of the Nile River, for easy access to water for washing and cleansing. There, the deceased's family would choose the form of mummification based on their financial means and social status. According to the writings of Herodotus, the ancient Greek historian, the wealthiest individuals were embalmed using the most elaborate and complete method. In contrast, the poor could only afford simpler procedures, which sometimes amounted to nothing more than drying out the body and wrapping it in linen. Social hierarchy was evident even in death. The first step in preserving the body was to remove the most perishable organs, the internal viscera. Embalmers carefully made a small incision on the left side of the abdomen to extract the liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines. These organs were treated separately, dried using natron, a naturally occurring salt compound, and then placed in 4 special vessels known as canopic jars. Each jar bore the head of one of the 4 sons of Horus, the protective deities of the dead. The human-headed Imseti guarded the liver, the baboon-headed Hapi held the lungs, the jackal-headed Duamutef protected the stomach, and the falcon-headed Kebesenuef preserved the intestines. The heart, believed by the ancient Egyptians to be the seat of the soul, emotions and intellect, played a crucial role in the weighing of the heart ceremony in the afterlife. In earlier periods, the heart was usually left inside the chest. However, starting in the New Kingdom, it was sometimes removed and replaced with a heart scarab amulet, typically a carved scarab beetle inscribed with a prayer from the Book of the Dead, asking the gods for forgiveness, and urging the heart not to betray the deceased by revealing their sins. In one of the most intriguing and somewhat unsettling steps of the process, embalmers dealt with the brain by inserting a long iron hook through the nostril, breaking up the brain tissue and removing it piece by piece. Sometimes the body was tilted so that the liquefied brain could drain out by gravity. Notably, the ancient Egyptians did not regard the brain as important. On the contrary, they believed the heart was the true centre of thought and emotion, while the brain was considered excess flesh, often discarded without ceremony. This nose-hooking technique remains one of the most striking and bizarre elements of Egyptian mummification that fascinates people even today. After the removal of the internal organs, the body was treated with natron, a highly absorbent natural salt composed of sodium carbonate, sodium bicarbonate, and sodium chloride. The corpse was laid on a slanted embalming table and completely covered in dry natron, while the internal cavities were also packed with the substance to extract all remaining moisture. This stage lasted exactly 40 days, a number of sacred significance in many Egyptian spiritual beliefs. By the end of this period, the body would have become significantly dehydrated, with shriveled skin, a lighter and more rigid form, and far less risk of decomposition. Once the drying process was complete, the body was removed from the natron and entered the final stage of embellishment. The corpse was carefully cleansed with aromatic oils, resin, and palm wine to deodorize and disinfect. Then the embalmers began the meticulous process of wrapping the body in linen, layer by layer, with great precision and refined technique. Between the linen layers, protective amulets were inserted such as scarabs, the Eye of Horus, and strips inscribed with magical spells, all intended to guard the deceased against evil forces and dangers in the afterlife. Throughout the wrapping process, embalmers would recite spells from the Book of the Dead, a sacred collection of texts guiding the soul through its journey beyond death. Each finger, toe, and wrist was wrapped individually. Some mummies were swathed in as many as 20 to 30 layers of linen, giving them their characteristic form. Particularly notable was the treatment of the eyes, shrunken and sunken by this stage, which were often replaced with black resin or gemstones to create the illusion that the deceased was still watching. This lifelike simulation was not meant to frighten the living, but to ensure that the dead could see the way upon resurrection. The final step involved placing a funerary mask over the face and interring the body in a series of nested coffins. These masks were crafted from materials like gold, precious woods, plaster, or cartonnage, layers of linen or papyrus, intricately painted to depict the deceased with a serene divine expression. The mask allowed the soul to recognize its body upon return for resurrection. The most famous example is the Mask of King Tutankhamun, crafted from solid gold and inlaid with precious stones, a timeless icon of Egyptian funerary art. The coffins themselves were designed in multiple nested layers. The innermost was anthropoid, shaped like a human, followed by larger wooden coffins, and finally placed within a sarcophagus, a massive stone container in the tomb. Each layer was adorned with hieroglyphs, depictions of gods, and scenes from the judgment of Osiris, the divine tribunal where the soul would be weighed and judged. To the ancient Egyptians, death was not an end, but a critical transition into the afterlife, a realm where the soul could live eternally, provided all the proper rituals were observed. Thus, mummification and funerary rites were not merely physical procedures, but sacred ceremonies imbued with deep religious and spiritual meaning. At the heart of the funerary ritual stood Anubis, the jackal-headed god, one of the most recognizable symbols of ancient Egyptian civilization. Anubis was believed to be the protector of the dead and the divine guardian of mummification. He frequently appeared in tomb paintings performing the opening of the mouth ceremony, a sacred rite that allowed the deceased to speak in the afterlife. His image reflected his sacred role in guarding the corpse from decay and ensuring the soul found peace in the afterworld. Another indispensable figure in the Egyptian belief system surrounding death was Osiris, the god of the afterlife and a symbol of rebirth. According to myth, Osiris was murdered and dismembered by his brother Seth, but was later resurrected by his wife Isis. His story formed the foundation of the Egyptian belief in life after death. When someone was properly mummified and the necessary rituals were completed, they were said to have become Osiris, meaning they would be resurrected in the next world, just as the god himself was. The ancient Egyptians believed that a person was made up of multiple metaphysical elements, the most important of which were the ka and ba. The ka was a life force or spiritual double of the individual, which needed a place to dwell, typically the preserved body or a portrait statue. If the body decomposed, the ka would have nowhere to return, resulting in the soul's annihilation. The ba, often depicted as a bird with a human head, was believed to be able to leave the body during the day and return at night. However, without a preserved body, the ba could not return, leaving the soul lost and unable to attain eternal rest. To help the soul navigate the many challenges of the afterlife, the deceased required the Book of the Dead, a collection of spells and instructions written on papyrus, leather, or carved onto tomb walls. These sacred texts guided the soul in how to address the gods, avoid demons, and pass the judgment of Osiris, where the heart of the deceased was weighed against the feather of Mat, the goddess of truth and justice. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the soul was granted eternal life. If heavier, it was devoured by Amit, a monstrous creature with the head of a crocodile, the body of a leopard, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus. Alongside these rituals, protective amulets played a vital role. They were inserted between the linen wrappings to shield the deceased from evil spirits. Each amulet served a specific function. The scarab beetle symbolized rebirth and was placed over the heart to prevent it from testifying against the dead during judgment. The Eye of Horus, Ujat, offered healing and protection. The Ankh represented eternal life, and the Jed pillar stood for stability and the enduring power of Osiris. All these sacred objects were wrapped with the mummy to ensure the soul's full protection on its journey beyond death. Not only was the body meticulously prepared, but the final resting place, the tomb, was also elaborately constructed by the ancient Egyptians as a kind of eternal home. A tomb was not merely a burial site. It was believed to be a place where the soul would return each night. Therefore, it needed to be well equipped with all necessary items and protected from tomb robbers. For the pharaohs, the most iconic type of tomb was the pyramid, an enduring symbol of supreme power and the aspiration for immortality. During the Old Kingdom period, around 2686 to 181 BCE, pyramids such as those of King Djoser, the Step Pyramid, Sneferu and Khufu, the Great Pyramid of Giza, were built with astonishing skill and engineering marvels that continue to amaze the modern world. However, by the time of the New Kingdom, around 1550-1070 BCE, Egyptians abandoned pyramid construction and instead buried pharaohs in the Valley of the Kings, a dry gorge in Thebes, modern-day Luxor, where tombs were carved deep into the cliffs to avoid looting. A typical royal tomb consisted of multiple chambers, with the burial chamber at its centre, housing the stone sarcophagus and the mummified body. Surrounding rooms were filled with offerings of food, statues of deities, daily life objects, and wall paintings illustrating the deceased's journey into the afterlife. Each mural and inscription served as a sacred ritual to protect the soul. During the funeral, the deceased was carried on a golden bark, crossing the Nile River to reach their final resting place. One of the most important rites was the opening of the mouth ceremony, in which a priest, sometimes the heir, used a golden tool to symbolically reopen the mouth, eyes, nose, and ears of the mummy. This ensured the dead could once again see, hear, eat, drink, and speak in the next life. Moreover, the deceased could not enter the afterlife empty-handed. They were buried with an abundance of grave goods. These could include food, bread, meat, beer, clothing, furniture, jewellery, musical instruments, and even games such as Senet, an ancient Egyptian board game. In pharaonic tombs, one might also find treasures of gold, fine crafts, and especially Ushabti figurines, small human-shaped statues holding hoes and baskets, believed to come to life and perform labour on behalf of the deceased in the afterlife. A wealthy person might be buried with hundreds of these figurines to ensure they never had to work again. All of these preparations reflect a powerful longing for immortality, a continuation of not just physical existence, but also a life of luxury, comfort, and honour, just as in the mortal world. Egyptian funerals were not merely farewells to the dead, but a sophisticated art of living. For those who had passed on, the art of mummification in ancient Egypt was not a fixed technique, but the result of millennia of evolution, beginning with rudimentary attempts during the Old Kingdom, reaching brilliant perfection in the New Kingdom, and gradually declining under foreign influence and Hellenization. During the Old Kingdom, 26-86 to 181 BCE, mummification was still in its infancy. The ancient Egyptians initially discovered that bodies buried directly in the hot, dry desert sands were naturally preserved. They began to imitate this phenomenon by removing internal organs and covering the body with natron salt, but without the refined methods that would come later. Soft tissues often partially decayed, and delicate parts such as the eyes, tongue, and fingers were rarely preserved. Although mummies from this era were crude, they represented the early development of a belief in life after death. The Middle Kingdom, 2055-1650 BCE, marked a significant leap forward in mummification techniques. Embalmers began standardizing procedures, including removing the brain through the nostrils using an iron hook, making an incision in the abdomen to extract internal organs, drying the body in natron for around 40 days, and applying fragrant oils to preserve the tissue. Coffins also evolved, from simple boxes to wooden anthropoid coffins carved with the likeness of the deceased's face, placed in elaborately decorated tomb chambers. This period also saw a rise in the use of protective amulets, and a clearer articulation of beliefs surrounding the Ka, Ba, and the afterlife. The New Kingdom, 1550-1070 BCE, was the golden age of mummification. Techniques during this time were nearly flawless. Skin remained supple, fingers retained their form, and hair and eyebrows could still be found intact after thousands of years. Embalmers used resins and rare spices from the East, along with the finest linen wrappings. Internal organs were placed in canopic jars, each protected by a specific deity. Funerary masks, most notably the golden mask of Tutankhamun, exemplified both artistic mastery and religious symbolism. The tombs in the Valley of the Kings, with their maze-like architecture, vivid wall paintings, magical spells, and inscriptions, documented the entire journey of the soul into the eternal realm. In the later periods, particularly during the Hellenistic era, from around 332 BCE onward, a deep cultural blending occurred. Under the Ptolemaic dynasty, Greek rulers of Egypt, the appearance of mummies began to shift. Funerary masks no longer depicted only traditional Egyptian deities, but also incorporated Greek-style portraits. The dead were often mummified with painted wooden panels placed over their faces, known as Fayum mummy portraits, which reflected a fusion of Egyptian and Greco-Roman spiritual aesthetics. However, by this time the technique had already begun to deteriorate, as embalming knowledge was gradually lost and society invested less in traditional funerary rites. Many famous mummies from ancient Egypt have survived to this day, becoming symbols of power, religion, and the Egyptians' extraordinary ability to preserve the dead across millennia. Tutankhamun, King Tut, is one of the most famous mummies in the world. not because of his power in life, but because his tomb was discovered nearly intact in 1922 by archaeologist Howard Carter. Inside the tomb was an immense treasure: a solid gold funerary mask, chariots, statues of gods, and the king's mummy enclosed within 3 nested coffins. Although his body was damaged due to careless embalming practices, his mask remains an eternal symbol of beauty and the ancient belief in life after death. Seti III, the father of Ramses II, has one of the best preserved mummies ever found. His skin is still soft, his nose intact, his hair thick, and his fingernails undamaged. Modern archaeologists use his body to study the highly sophisticated embalming techniques of the New Kingdom. Ramses II, the longest reigning pharaoh, 66 years, is the subject of an amusing modern tale. In 1974, his mummy began to suffer from a severe fungal infection, prompting the Egyptian government to send it to France for conservation treatment. In order to make the transportation legal, the French government issued an official passport for the mummy of Ramses II, listing his occupation as King, deceased, of Egypt. This passport is still preserved today as a unique historical document. Additionally, Queen Tiye, the mother of Akhenaten and grandmother of Tutankhamun, was identified through DNA analysis of an unnamed mummy. She's believed to have been one of the most powerful women in ancient Egypt. Also worth mentioning is Amos Nefertari, the first queen to be deified after her death. It wasn't only humans who were mummified. Sacred animals such as cats, falcons, crocodiles and baboons were also embalmed as offerings to the gods. Entire tomb complexes containing thousands of mummified cats, sacred to the goddess Bastet, have been discovered, reflecting the Egyptians' deep spiritual connection with sacred animals and their beliefs about the afterlife. In ancient Egyptian society, mummification was not merely a religious ritual. It formed the foundation of an entire social and economic system. Contrary to the common image of a single person performing the process, mummification was, in reality, the product of a highly specialized and tightly organized professional network. At the core were professional embalmers, often belonging to the priestly class or closely affiliated with temples. They were not only skilled in medicine and anatomy, but also regarded as intermediaries between the world of the living and the dead. Thus, mummification could not be conducted casually. It had to follow complex religious rites performed by individuals with sacred authority. Supporting them was a diverse team of assistants: linen wrappers, artisans who crafted funerary masks from gold or painted wood, craftsmen who made the canopic jars used to store extracted internal organs, and priests who recited prayers throughout the 70-day embalming process. Each person played a specific role in ensuring that the deceased soul could be reborn in the afterlife. This gave rise to a complex funerary economy. Egyptians of all social classes aspired to be mummified. However, the cost varied dramatically. Royalty and nobility could afford the most elaborate services, using the finest materials, complete rituals, and grand tombs. Meanwhile, poorer individuals often settled for simpler versions, sometimes just wrapped in reed mats and buried near the desert so that their bodies would dry naturally. Thus, death, seemingly the end, became a focal point around which multiple layers of society revolved, reflecting the complex structure and profound spirituality of Nile River civilization. In modern times, mummification is no longer solely a matter of religion or archaeology. It has become a treasure trove for scientific discovery. Thanks to technological advances, researchers can now decode the past without unwrapping the mummies themselves. Through CT scans, X-rays and DNA analysis, scientists have uncovered astonishing findings. Pharaohs like Tutankhamun had congenital deformities caused by inbreeding. Ramses II's mummy shows signs of arthritis and arteriosclerosis. Several mummies display evidence of surgery, acupuncture, or early forms of medical experimentation. Additionally, analysis of hair and skin has revealed dietary habits, heavy metal poisoning, and even causes of death. However, these revelations have also sparked ethical debates. Many scholars ask, should mummies, once living individuals who loved, feared, and died, be displayed as museum artifacts, or should they be laid to rest in accordance with the spiritual beliefs of ancient Egypt? Beyond science, mummies have had a powerful influence on popular culture. The image of a mummy rising from a stone sarcophagus has become an iconic symbol in film, most famously in Hollywood's The Mummy series, as well as in countless novels, comic books, video games, and even music. From legend to entertainment, the mummies of ancient Egypt have lived a second life in the imagination of the modern world. Ultimately, mummification was not just a technique for preserving the body. It was a convergence of religion, art, and science within a brilliant civilization, filled with contrast between light and shadow. It was the expression of a deep belief in life after death, in the eternal journey the soul must undertake. Through mummification, the ancient Egyptians revealed a unique worldview, one in which life and death were not opposites, but closely intertwined, where a dry corpse marked not an end, but the beginning of rebirth. And from this, we come to understand that their legacy is not merely the mummies resting in cold tombs, but the stories of humanity, of faith, and of the longing to transcend death, an enduring desire that keeps the Egyptian civilization alive in the memory of humankind.